For hundreds of years, the entire world was, well, it was in motion. Whole nations just packed up everything and moved across continents. They were looking for safety, for new land, for a fresh start. Now, it was definitely a time of chaos and conflict, for sure, but it was also the very moment our modern world was born. So let's dive in and figure out how this incredible story unfolded.
The answers to questions like these, well, they weren't decided in quiet meetings or peaceful negotiations. Nope, they were forged in a massive, chaotic, centuries-long event we now call the Great Migration Period. And believe it or not, it all started with a single push.
Okay, so to really get this, you have to imagine a world where borders weren't these fixed lines on a map. They were constantly shifting, constantly changing. This was, in every sense, a world on the move.
Think about it like a huge line of dominoes, one stretching all the way across Europe and Asia. Then, around the year 375, something, or maybe someone, came along and knocked over that very first domino. And it set off a chain reaction that nobody could stop, one that would completely reshape civilization as we know it.
So what was going on? Well, a bunch of things were happening all at once. The climate was getting colder, which meant it was way harder to grow food. People were going hungry. And right when things seemed like they couldn't get any worse, this terrifying new group of warriors showed up from the east. And this wasn't just some army on the march. No, we're talking about entire peoples, men, women, children, leaving their homes behind, forever.
Now, these warriors who kicked everything off were nomadic, and that's a really important word here. Nomadic peoples don't build big cities and stay put. They're masters of surviving on the move, often living in wagons or tents, and they are absolutely incredible horse riders. And the most feared nomads of this whole era? Yeah, they were called the Huns.
When the Huns came thundering in from the huge open plains of Central Asia, it was like a storm hitting. They were these brilliant, lightning-fast warriors on horseback, and the dramatic tribes living in Europe at the time, like the Goths, had just never seen anything like them. Totally terrified, these tribes really only had one choice: run. And they fled west, heading straight for the biggest, most powerful empire in the world.
And all that running, that massive push to the west, brought hundreds of thousands of desperate people right to the doorstep of the Roman Empire. For centuries, Rome had been the superpower, the center of everything. But now, it was about to be tested in a way it had never been before.
This whole Gothic crisis is just a perfect storm of how things could go so wrong. It all starts in 376 AD. The Goths show up at the Danube River, and they're not there to invade. They're refugees, and they're asking Rome for protection from the Huns. The Romans agree to let them in, but then they treated them horribly. They basically left them to starve. This was a massive mistake. Just 2 years later, in 378, the desperate Goths fought back and actually crushed a Roman army. And the whole thing builds and builds until 410, when the Goths did the unthinkable. They marched all the way to Rome itself and smashed through its wall.
Okay, let's just stop and think about that number. 800 years. For 8 centuries, no foreign army had even gotten close to capturing the city of Rome. People literally called it the Eternal City because they thought it would stand forever. And then, it fell.
You have to understand, this wasn't just about losing a battle. This was a psychological earthquake. The news sent shockwaves across the entire known world. If Rome itself wasn't safe, then was anywhere safe? It was a huge signal to everyone that the old superpower was seriously crumbling.
The Goths weren't the only ones, though. Another tribe, the Vandals, went on this absolutely epic journey. They marched thousands of miles through what we now call France and Spain, crossed the sea into North Africa, and then did something nobody expected. They became a sea power. They built a navy, took over the Mediterranean Sea, and in 455, they sailed right up to Rome and sacked it too. And get this, that raid on Rome was so legendary for being destructive that it literally changed our language. It's exactly where we get our modern word vandalism. So every time you hear that word, you're hearing a little echo from this ancient event.
But, this whole era wasn't just about things falling apart. As the old Roman world started to break down, something totally new was being built right on top of it. Out of all that chaos, new kingdoms began to rise, kingdoms that would lay the groundwork for the countries we know today.
So not every tribe had the same game plan. You had groups like the Goths and the Vandals who, as we saw, traveled these incredible distances to conquer brand new lands. But another really powerful group, the Franks, they did things differently. They tended to stick closer to their original home and just slowly, patiently expanded their territory, often mixing in with the people who were already there.
And you know what? That slow and steady strategy, it worked. Big time. A really smart Frankish king named Clovis united all the tribes and then made what you'd call a real game-changing move. He converted to Christianity. This helped him earn the trust of the local Roman population and get the super powerful support of the church. He ended up creating a stable, lasting kingdom that is the direct ancestor of modern France.
Okay, so while all that's happening, let's hop across the sea to Britain, where a totally different story is unfolding. As soon as the Roman army packed up and left, the island was basically defenseless. So tribes from what is now Germany and Denmark, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, sailed over and started to settle. And the most important thing they brought with them was their language. And that Germanic language slowly evolved over centuries into the English that you and I are speaking right this second.
So, once the dust finally started to settle, the world looked completely different. The Roman Empire in the West was gone, but in its place, a new, uniquely European identity was starting to form out of all the pieces.
Now, it's really important to remember something here. It was only half of the Roman Empire that fell. The eastern half, with its capital in a city called Constantinople, was a lot more stable and much better defended. It actually survived all of this turmoil and would last for another 1,000 years, preserving a ton of ancient knowledge along the way.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway from all this? The languages we speak today, like English and French, the spread of religion that shaped the continent, the very countries you see on the map, and a brand new culture that mixed Roman and Germanic traditions together, all of it was forged in the fire of this incredible migration period.
Eventually, this incredible era of huge continent-wide movements did come to an end. By about the year 800, when a new, powerful emperor named Charlemagne was crowned, a sense of stability started to return. New borders were being set, new kingdoms were becoming solid, and the map was starting to look a whole lot more like the one we recognize today.
So, what's the final verdict on this period? Was it just the violent, chaotic end of the ancient world? Or was it something more? Maybe it was the messy, painful, but ultimately creative birth of the world we all live in now. What do you think?